This video is about how to boost your students' engagement and motivation, specifically during online and hybrid learning. So why is engagement so hard right now? Are you frustrated that your students are not completing their assignments right now as you're continuing to navigate the world of online or hybrid learning? Maybe they're just not engaging in your lessons. You can't monitor what they're doing as they're learning from home, and you can't offer the same amount of support you would pre-COVID. Well, if this sounds like you, you are not alone. Keep watching to learn how you can motivate engagement during online and hybrid learning. I'm Katie, I'm founder of Teachers Resource Force, where I love talking about all things character, life skills, art and tech, and just generally all things teaching. So let's get right into the video. So what we'll cover in this video: why engagement and motivation are exceptionally challenging during online hybrid learning and what you can do to help give it a boost. The root of where motivation stems from for each individual student and how to get your students to get intrinsically motivated. A step-by-step strategy to help your students take control of their learning and goals in order to motivate them. And finally, ideas for removing the resistance that students have with engagement, as well as ways to incentivize it. Yes, the struggle is real. Student engagement and motivation is challenging at the best of times, let alone when the world has turned upside down. So whether you're teaching online, face-to-face or hybrid, it's a tough situation for all. Whichever model you are doing, the experience of education is all so different for students as well as it is for you. And I think a lot of the feelings of despair and lack of motivation have to do with the unfortunate uncertainty of the future that is now at play. The world as we know it has changed drastically, and it is incredibly challenging for students to navigate their place in it. So keep watching to learn ways in which you can help motivate and engage your students during these challenging times of online hybrid learning. So how do you motivate your students? Well, it is challenging because you can't make your students feel motivated. So what do we do? Well, it was Dwight Eisenhower that said, motivation is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. Yes. So the question then becomes, how can we get students to want to get motivated? The first thing that comes to mind is getting right back to the very core, the why. And Simon Sinek is famous for his inspirational Start with the Why TED Talk. And I recommend you take a few moments to pause and go back and watch that video. Even if you have already seen it in the past, it still continues to blow my mind every time I watch it. And it will help put some context into the next part of this video. So what's their why? I believe if you follow Simon's model in helping your students get back to the very core of their why, it could create a powerful shift for them in helping them feel more motivated to learn and succeed at school. What's more, when you encourage your students to do this and complete goal-setting activities, the motivation then becomes personalized for every student. As we all know, what works for one won't always work for another. An important point to note is, while we teach with our why in mind, our why isn't always aligned with our students' why. And this is why I believe it's important for students to reflect on their own reasons for wanting to get more motivated or succeed at school. Is it because they need particular skills, qualifications for a goal of theirs? Is it just so they can have something to focus on to keep their mind off their personal problems? Is it because they're competitive? Is it to prove someone wrong? And the list goes on. Our whys as teachers can tend to be because we want the best for their future, but their reasons could be wildly different, perhaps even superficial. The key, I believe, is not to judge or necessarily even influence their why. Hence, this exercise might be best as a personal project for them to reflect on and use as their driving force for boosting motivation. They might even be more honest if their why remains completely private. In all honesty, my opinion is that it doesn't matter what their reason is, providing it doesn't hurt anyone and ultimately helps them succeed. So if helping your students find their why in order to help them get motivated is something that you're interested in doing with your class, you are welcome to check out this goal-setting journal and PowerPoint, which guides them through this process. And I will put the link in the description below so you can check it out. Of course, you want your students to be successful. You give them all the support you can, but you also know that you can only do so much. Your students need to meet you halfway. The best way to do this is to encourage them to want more for themselves and their life, so they take some ownership over their goals and dreams. This is where this ultimate guide to setting powerful goals and living your best life journal comes in. With this resource, you will receive a 42-slide PowerPoint lesson to help teach and guide your students to successfully goal setting using a scientifically proven 7-step process, which they can record in their very own ready-to-go journals. No prior knowledge or experience is necessary, as the PowerPoint guides you through each step for them. You can print all or just a selection of pages from this 21-page journal and bind and staple them together, or you can give students the digital version which comes with it so they can type straight onto the document, no paper needed. By encouraging and teaching your students how to set effective goals, you will find that they start caring more about their future. They'll start focusing more in lessons, they'll become more conscientious and start living their best lives. But as with all things, your students need to keep reflecting on their goals all year long to ensure that they remain focused or driven. So empower your students, encourage them to get motivated, and help them live their best lives today with this journal and lesson. Okay, so what if your students need some extra motivation incentives in the short term? Yes, sometimes you might find you need a more short-term solution to boost engagement in lessons, whether it be participation during online lessons or encouragement to complete assignments. So here are some ideas for short-term incentives to boost student engagement. So how do you currently take attendance during online or hybrid teaching? It can be challenging if your students are not obliged to turn on their cameras. So how can you prove they are really present and engaging in the lesson? Some teachers ask students to verbally contribute, but what if they're too shy or they declare technical difficulties? An effective way around this issue is to use the question option on Google Classroom as a way of taking attendance and getting them to write down whatever question of the day you're requesting. Or you can use something like this virtual morning meeting journal where students can type the answers to the question of the day straight into their own journal. The reason you might find an increase in engagement with this method is because some students might be uncomfortable with engaging in lessons online, especially if they are choosing not to be on screen. Thus, offering them the opportunity to type their responses in private will encourage student engagement and also provide you with a convenient documented record of attendance too. For a more thorough check-in, then you could also use Google Forms. And you don't need to be using Google Classroom as a learning management system to use them. Checking in on your students' well-being is a useful thing to do in general to see how they're getting on and whether they have things they want you to know that they might not feel comfortable sharing online during a call in front of the whole class, for example. Another idea is to offer an incentive for participation during the lesson to encourage your students to remain focused on the call. For example, everyone who has engaged in the lesson in some way could get a reward at the end, maybe a game of Among Us, a short video, or a game of Kahoot, something to encourage them to stick with it to the end. Digital rewards is also an option. So if you find you would like more active participation from individual students during the lesson, you might find these distance learning digital rewards beneficial. So the way they work is when you wish to reward positive behavior or participation of your students, you can pull up either of these two Google Slides documents, and while sharing your screen online, you can either share the link to the slides with your students or get your students to call out for you to hit the spacebar to freeze the screen and find out what their reward is. There is a regular text version which comes up on screen, or you could even go a step further and use the QR code option to add that extra air of mystery and excitement. So students will need to scan the QR code to see what the reward is on their own personal device. It's up to them then when they choose to cash in their prize, whatever it happens to be. You will also receive a quick sheet with this resource so you can record once they have won a reward, and you can just tick off what they won and when they cashed it in to help you keep a record if you want to. The students really love having the excitement of the lottery, and celebrating in class is also really motivating for the rest of the group too. So set up a modern and free reward system for distance learning with this resource and create a really happy buzz in your classroom. Your students will look forward to your online lessons and will be on their best behaviour, allowing you to concentrate on teaching and their learning. So if you want to check these out, I'll put them in the link below. Pull your students out of despair. Student engagement, motivation, participation, they were challenging at the best of times. And now with teaching in the COVID era, many classrooms, whether they're online, hybrid or face-to-face, are now seeing these challenges exacerbated. However, hopefully you found these ideas useful for helping you pull your students out of the despair many of them are experiencing. Finding their why through guided journaling and short-term incentives can help students navigate this new world of education as we know it, as the world battles a pandemic. So let's summarize everything that we covered today. So number 1, help your students get back to the very core of their why, as it could create a powerful shift for them in helping them feel more motivated to learn and succeed at school. Number 2, encourage your students to take some ownership of their own goals and dreams with a guided goal setting experience. Take attendance and hear from every student by asking them to answer a question by typing their response in rather than being forced to speak on camera. Use Google Forms to take attendance and nurture wellbeing at the same time. Give your students a chance to check in with you on a one-to-one basis. I do have Google Forms that are ready to go for you to use as well. I'll also link those below. Encourage participation by offering incentives such as group games or videos for those who engaged in the lesson in some way. And use interactive distance learning rewards coupons to encourage positive behaviour and participation in your lesson. Well, that's all for now. I hope you found this helpful. If you want to get in touch, here are all the socials. Choose your favourite and come over and say hi. And leave any questions or comments below. And remember, I will have links to all the resources I mentioned today in this video in the link below that you can check out and use in your own classroom. And as always, you can email me at katie@teachersresourceforce.com if you have any other questions. I'll speak to you next time. Bye.